I want to thank the teams and the coordinators for your participation. As Hope Williams said, this is a very unusual year, but I'm glad we were able to do this. I thoroughly enjoyed the first session. I want to thank those who are with us who are prior year judges and moderators, and tell you that we will expect you back as a judge or a moderator next year when we're going to do this in person. I'm trusting that, and I thank our sponsors who are here, who have been so supportive and have made this possible now for 10 consecutive years, which is remarkable. Let me call on the campus coordinators to identify your campus and mention each member's name, and then we'll draw to see who presents first. So any one of you who wants to start can start.
I'll jump in for Catawba. I'm Dr. Norris Feeney. I'm an associate professor of politics here at Catawba. And with me today are Paige Carter, Noah Brass, Nelia Holcomb, Bree Eller, and Nick Travato. Y'all speak up if I forgot anybody.
Thank you. Who wants to go? How about Mars Hill?
Hi there. I'm Ryan Bell. I'm a general studies instructor here at Mars Hill. I'm going to let the students introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Marcus Orda. I'm a sophomore at Mars Hill.
I'm Abigail Wilson, also a sophomore.
I'm Sierra Mitchell. I'm a junior at Mars Hill.
I'm Isaac Woodley, and I am a sophomore at Mars Hill.
Thank you. Montreat?
I'm Mark Wells. I'm the professor of philosophy and ethics at Montreat College. I'll let the team introduce themselves. We have 6 team members here.
Okay.
I'm Luke Livonius. I'm a junior at Montreat College.
Hi, I'm Matthew Kaufman. I'm a junior as well.
I'm Caleb Wells. I'm a freshman at Montreat College.
I'm Caroline Courtney. I'm a senior at Montreat College.
I'm Rebecca Hammond. I'm a senior at Montreat College.
I'm Peyton Landy. I'm a senior at Montreat College.
I think that was 6, but I may have lost count. Is that 6? Okay, University of Mount Olive.
Yes, good morning. My name is Tamara Atkinson, and I'm the chair for the Healthcare Management Department. And we have Kyle Hayden, Julius Machengi, Abigail Hernandez, and Hayden Lee. Thank
you very much. I was interested to see some very familiar faces from past ethics bowls in this, and I look forward to this conversation. I have put the names of the 4 institutions in this bowl, which magically appears and disappears because of my virtual screen. And I will draw a name out to see who presents first. It is Montreat College, if you will go first.
Right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for engaging this conversation with us regarding the question of the ethical responsibility of local school boards to provide public education during a prolonged state of emergency, such as a pandemic. Montreat College holds the position that schools do indeed have a responsibility to provide a safe place for learning for children and teens. To serve students at a time like this, we would like to argue for a virtual or online option for learning. The number of students engaging in either virtual or in-person learning will depend highly on the number of students on a particular campus. In addition to this, students who are failing semesters will only be allowed to attend school in person. To further this discussion, my team member Peyton will discuss the tech challenges during this time and how students and teachers will adapt to virtual learning. Rebecca will discuss physical needs of students and how schools are crucial for meeting these needs. Matthew will elaborate on the necessity for schools for the social and mental well-being of students, and Luke will discuss the necessity of education for human flourishing. I'd like to pass it on to my team member, Peyton.
Thanks, Caroline. I appreciate it. So tech has been a major challenge throughout this entire pandemic. I mean, even currently we have a tech person here to help us with the Zoom meeting. Tech support is greatly needed for all these teachers who are just having to become cybersecurity and technology experts overnight. And then we have students and parents at home who are struggling to meet their technology needs, while IT staff alone is being stretched so thin. So the solutions that we propose is that first and foremost, we need more IT staff. The average school district here in North Carolina has between 1 and 2 IT staff per school, and this just strictly is not enough, especially with the solution that Montreat College is proposing, which we are going to allow both in-person and online school. And we also need more places for people who do not have Wi-Fi at home to be able to connect online if they do choose to attend virtually. In fact, I'm a cybersecurity major here at Montreat College, and I actually work with the Carolina Cyber Center, who's actually been granted a grant from the state of North Carolina to actually help spread cybersecurity awareness training, but also to assist with this pandemic and actually establishing Wi-Fi access points for districts who are just less fortunate and have lower socioeconomic status. And so part of my job has been actually going out and helping these areas to provide Wi-Fi at local churches and other group community areas for these students. And just to see all the help that we've been able to provide has been great. And one thing that we need to say is that the best way to help tech, though, is also to stay open. And Rebecca is going to talk about why the physical needs of students also need to be met in person.
In continuation of what Peyton was saying, even when we do have complete technical support for students, there are students who are still failing classes simply because learning online is very challenging. And in these cases, based on studies that have been done, we believe it is best to move these students into the building when at all possible, as we know that students do tend to learn better in this way. Another thing that schools provide on top of just education is they also provide for physical needs of students. One way that they do this is many students rely on public schools for getting food. They can get 2 meals at school, and when everything moved online, a lot of families were struggling with this. Schools also provide a place of safety for many students. As much as we don't want to necessarily acknowledge it, many students are safer at school than they are at home simply from a physical standpoint, and many do not want to go home afterwards due to their home life. Schools also provide an opportunity for athletics and physical activity, which allows students to interact with others, as well as provides a way to relieve stress, something which we're all aware is very prevalent throughout this pandemic. And Matthew is going to elaborate more on that.
Thank you, Rebecca. Even as schools continue to help people to develop intellectually and physically, providing a safe environment for those activities, it is also imperative that schools continue to offer in-person interactions for the social and mental well-being of their students, and therefore eventually the community as a whole. Primary education is, in America today, one of the few avenues most young people have to learn how to live among their peers, to make friends, and to find belonging. Just as they learn teamwork and develop camaraderie through athletics, alongside the physical benefits thereof, the school provides an essential environment for social interaction. Mental illness and suicide are wreaking even worse havoc on people of all ages and classes now. Schools cannot remove one of the most important tools which young people have to help them cope. As a wise old book once said, it is not good for man to be alone. Dividing the intellectual learning from the physical and social learning is a gravely dangerous division to make. To speak more on the essentiality of unity there to the human condition, I turn now to my teammate Luke.
Thank you, Matthew. Throughout the ages, it has been recognized that education is necessary for the formation of moral and ethical thinking. The capacity for this sort of thought lies dormant within every human being, but ethical and moral understanding must be developed through education. As ethical and moral thought is necessary for human flourishing, it can then be extrapolated that education, good education, is required for that kind of flourishing to be possible. Such was the realization of the classical thinkers. For example, Cicero, who declared that the cultivation of the intellect through education was the foundation of a moral society. We must ensure that the opportunity for human flourishing through education remains attainable, even in times of crisis such as this pandemic. When education seems of least practical value is in fact when it is most essential. The moral future of a society rests on the education of its youth.
To restate our argument, Montreat College believes that schools provide a variety of services to students and families and cannot be paused for a long period of time. Providing both a virtual and in-person option will keep the campus safe. The school board has an ethical responsibility to teach students in a safe environment. We want to give options because of the various needs of students. No student is the same, and some might be comfortable with the virtual option while others desperately need what schools provide. Thank you again to our facilitators and fellow students.
Thank you very much. We draw the second institution. University of Mount Olive. You're up.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kyle Hayden. I'm proud to represent the University of Mount Olive, and thank you, judges and moderators, and thank you to the other teams that are participating alongside us. We appreciate the opportunity to be here, and we appreciate you all taking the time out to be here as well. So today we were asked the question, what is the ethical responsibility of local schools to provide public education during a prolonged state of emergency, such as a pandemic? And our answer, we feel that the best approach is the utilitarian approach. We feel that we need to have a full in-person option and a full virtual option in line with student, parent, and teacher preferences. Now, why do I say this? Why do we say this? Because local school boards have a fiduciary duty to provide the most robust educational experience in line with the North Carolina State Board Association. And per their guidelines, that is providing every student the most sound basic education, which is a minimum of 185 days or 1,025 hours of instruction, covering at least 9 calendar months. And they have to stay in line with the state educational board's program. At the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, to meet these state and local educational mandates, virtual learning was implemented. However, we've come a long way since the beginning of this pandemic. We feel that local school boards are responsible to provide an equitable educational experience to all North Carolina students. But this also applies to teachers who are tasked to achieve our educational standards and goals. We define the most equitable solution as providing both students and teachers, along with the students' parents, the resources they need to be successful. At the beginning of the pandemic, we had 3 plans outlined by the state of North Carolina and our governor, which was the Plan A, Plan B, and Plan C. To explain these plans and why we chose Plan A, I would like to pass it forward to my colleague, Julius.
Thank you, Kyle. Yes, we analyzed the current options that have been proposed by the NC Education Department and looked at the advantages and disadvantages of each. Our interest was to see whether in the options proposed, are they providing an ethical model that will provide the greatest good for all involved, the students, parents, and teachers. In Plan A, this one is providing an either in-person option or a virtual option. So the in-person option is the normal traditional program, but students have to follow rigorous safety measures, including wearing masks while in school, social distancing, and sanitizing surfaces. The advantage of this is it provides social interaction and a sense of normalcy. The disadvantages would be that some people would argue that there are safety issues involved. For the virtual option, students take classes from home online, and they have to be fully supervised by the parents when they're doing this. This provides a scheduling challenge for parents, not to mention the increase in the rate of mental health diseases, drug use, and other social related inconsistencies, in addition to the huge technology disparity. For Plan B, the hybrid program, students take a class in person and then later on in the week, they take one online. I have a biology class that I take on Monday, and then on Wednesday and Friday, I take it online. The greatest disadvantage of this is the scheduling nightmare for parents who have to make time to drop their children and then pick them up later on. For Plan C, the fully online plan, students take classes from home. The advantage of this obviously is that there is more safety. The greatest disadvantage to this is that parents have to be really involved, and this may create social-emotional challenges for the students that are involved. I would like to hand it over to my colleague Abigail, who will explain why we ended up with a utilitarian approach.
So thank you, Julius. For the solution of case 2, from all the plans that are available, the most ethical way is to strive Plan A. We really feel that the Plan A is the best solution. for when people wear their masks, wash their hands, and social distance. This can help reduce the spread of the virus, and to give more information of Plan A, I'll pass it to my colleague, Hayden.
Thank you, Abby. So we chose Plan A for several reasons. The main reason was we have found several studies, including a pediatric study that was conducted in North Carolina. It was conducted over 9 schools with almost 100,000 students and staff. And they found there was almost no transmission, no secondary transmission, and the rate of transmission was almost less than 1%. And another big factor was the amount of suicides and drug use that have occurred in 2020 among high school and middle school age children and even elementary school age children. The number of suicides have almost doubled, and drug use has increased a large percentage. And we are really seeing a lot of mental health crisis as well, along with the coronavirus crisis. And so we thought that Plan A allowed a choice for parents who want to send their children to school, who may have kids who are struggling, learning at home, struggling with these mental issues. Our education has suffered online. The numbers are not as good as they are when we have in-person learning. There's more dropouts and more students failing grades than ever. I believe it increased almost 10%. It almost increased 10% the number of students who failed a grade last semester. And so we're really seeing students take a lot of punishment as a result of this crisis. And so that's why we went with Plan A. We feel that Plan A allows those who want to keep their kids home safe, and if they want to have that option to do full online learning, then they can do so. But if you want to send your kids to school and you want to have them engage in that social element, engage in physical, actual paper and pen schoolwork like it was before the pandemic, while trying to keep them safe as shown from studies that have occurred, then it allows the freedom of choice for everyone. Thank you.
So in conclusion, that's why we feel that the utilitarian approach is the best method to counteract the COVID-19 pandemic. And we feel that the most equitable solution is giving the parents, the teachers, and the students the choice as to what is the best solution for them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Time for the magic bowl again. Catawba College.
Okay, hi, my name is Paige. Our team would like to say thank you again to everybody participating today, including our moderators and judges, and of course the other teams. So after looking at the question, what is the ethical responsibility of local school boards to provide public education during a prolonged state of emergency, like the pandemic that we're in, our team agreed that the primary job of the local school board is to provide an equal and safe education to all students. And we believe that this can be done by giving parents and students the choice to partake in either online or in-person learning. So we also think that there's a secondary responsibility of the local school board, and that is to their employees and teachers. So we believe that it is important for the school boards to provide a safe working environment for their employees and give them the option to teach in the way that they see is safest for them. Next, we're going to discuss our answer in more detail. So I'm going to hand it over to Nelia, and she's going to talk about our ethical theory. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Paige. So yeah, it's definitely we have an ethical responsibility to make sure that there are both virtual and in-person classes, as well as, our theory is duty-based ethics, which argues ethical action is the one which is consistent with the primary duty or obligation we have as human beings. The primary purpose of public school systems is that, to make sure that all school-age children have the opportunity to go to school, either virtual or in person. But we also have to consider secondary obligations, such as making sure that, employers are also safe, especially making sure their environment makes it so that they can go to teach children. But we also have to make sure that we're reducing food insecurity among children, which is why we need to have both in person and have online classes. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it on to Nick to give us a better explanation on that.
So as stated before, it's the school board job to ensure that everyone has an ability and access to receive an education. So with this in mind, you have to ensure that our school systems here have everything put in place so that you can receive your education virtually or in person. This has actually been enacted and done by our local school system, CMS. My younger brother and sister are both part of that. And one of them, interestingly enough, has chosen to attend in person, and one of them has chosen to do it virtually. And both of them have been able to do this seamlessly. So this is something that is being enacted and can be done. Further steps need to be taken in order to ensure that all families have this ability. So some schools have partnered with AT&T and they have been given tablets and free 4G with that, so that individuals within lower socioeconomic classes have access to Wi-Fi and the ability to join school virtually if that is how they would prefer to receive their education. Obviously, I mentioned there's only some schools have partnered and done that. So we need to have this available to all individuals. And I'll pass on to Noah.
Thanks, Nick. So just to wrap it up kind of succinctly, the reason that we chose a duty-based approach is because we think that the question is pretty straightforward. The question is, what is the ethical responsibility of the school board? Well, the ethical responsibility of the school board as an institution that we as a society have created is to satisfy the requests of the community. Again, so there's kind of what we've been talking about is that there's a lot of things that we as a community ask of the school board. Obviously, the main one is effective education, but alongside that, you have the safety of the students, safety of the teachers, meals, a community environment to develop social skills, and somewhere for kids to be, especially young kids, during the day. And so without getting bogged down in too much logistic thinking, the ethical responsibility is to satisfy all those needs with or without a pandemic. And so, like I said, without getting too bogged down in the logistics, we think that the best way that you can do that to satisfy your obligation to society as a school board is to offer the opportunity to be in person or online. And that's a decision that parents can make. And the reason that that works out so well is because it's not just parents and kids who have concerns about coronavirus. We've got plenty of teachers who may be in a high risk category. We're all in school right now. I know for us, I've got professors who are only teaching online right now because they're in a high risk category. So adopting a plan like this gives them an avenue where they can teach online. Undoubtedly, there's going to be kids that want online school. They aren't as concerned about the meals and the community environment. They're just concerned about coronavirus. They can take classes online. However, if you need meal security, if you need daycare during the day, if you need your kid to develop those social skills, you have the opportunity to send them in a classroom. And so we know that that can get logistically difficult. We know that there's a lot that goes into that, but succinctly, we think that the ethical responsibility of the school boards is to satisfy its obligations to society. And thank you so much. That's it for us.
Thank you very much. Okay, there's a lot of suspense as to which name I will draw out this time, I'm sure. It is Mars Hill University. So Mars Hill, if you will begin when you're ready, please.
I'd first like to thank all of the sponsors, people who were able to put all of us together, the NCICU and the other teams here. It's been a great opportunity to be able to have an ethics bowl, given all of the circumstances that have been happening in the last 18 months. When we're talking about local education boards, we have to be realistic about their abilities. They do not have the same levels of funding as, say, a federal education department or a state education department. And their primary difficulty in the last 12 months has been trying to analyze the risk between opening up or staying online and getting criticisms from both sides saying we need to open up more and it's unsafe. So in this balance, there's been a very fierce argument about what should they actually be doing. So overall, over the course of the next 6 or 7 minutes, we will be discussing the importance of education given through age group, the differences in the counties and the budgets from Mecklenburg County to Henderson County or Davie County. And on top of that, the abilities of the parents, their financial situations, depending on where they live, whether it's rural or urban, and all of the styles of teaching, whether it's fully open, closed, or hybrid, and the ability to provide the same consistent quality education that will impact students 10 years down the road. What we do today is very important to how people are going to be able to develop their lives 10 years later. At the end of the day, the academic excellence of the children and the students is the goal, and local boards need to consider the variety of needs of the students they are teaching.
Thank you for that. The needs of the students are extremely vital to determining the ethical responsibility of school boards. And first and foremost, the safety of the students is necessary. And I will be arguing why especially younger students need to be in person. So factoring in the grade level, when you have a 17-year-old that has a car and has Wi-Fi to connect and has friend groups and has developed their social life, they are less likely to need an in-person education simply because they have become self-reliant and have taught themselves how to learn. But a 5-year-old that is just starting kindergarten cannot just step into Zoom and be expected to know how to learn. This creates a large problem for the younger age kids. So your K through 5 is cognitively, they're still developing, so they need the social interaction and the physical classroom. This is very important. And other examples of where the physical classroom is needed is such as a fine arts education. As the music majors can attest on our team, and as someone who has a sibling in music, Zoom and music just do not mix. The echoing sounds, so there are certain classes that need to be taught in person and they need the opportunity to learn. But overall, school is almost always the primary method of socialization for young children and teenagers.
Thank you, Sierra. This leads into my next point. I cannot emphasize how vital socialization is to teens and children in the school system. In reality, if you asked a student what their favorite part of the day is, 95% are going to say seeing their friends. That is their rock, their trustees, and without their friends, their interest in academics often suffers. This may not seem like a priority in the times of COVID because there's so many huge things to think about, but we need this more than ever because the students are getting out into public. They don't see the people they should be seeing, their teachers, their friends. And so right now that socialization, I can't emphasize it enough. And alongside this, through Zoom, I'm sure right now, like some people are zoning out, and students do this as well. They are not being active and engaged like they should be, like they could be in a classroom in person. And this happens, but when they're not engaged, they're not encoding the information that they should be. This is 8 hours a day that is going to waste because they are not learning, they are not putting that information in the brain. And that's honestly a huge struggle right now. I am one of the music majors Sierra mentioned, and I've had to do observations where some classes are in person, some are not. And to be honest, it's a mess. And the teachers are doing their best, and I cannot thank them enough for that. But it is the ethical responsibility of the school board to ensure that students are engaged, they receive the interaction they need, and that the development is happening and they are making sure that students are learning effectively.
Well said. Like Abby and Sierra said, in-person learning is a huge value when it comes to putting the students first. But public education is one of the core foundations of society, and the problems of providing education extend much farther than that. It extends to the outreach of the entire community. It's important to parents and teachers' jobs. Everyone is already receiving less money, and some become unemployed because of this pandemic. And that was the problem before education became in the picture. And parents and creates even a negative feedback loop. They may lose their jobs to take care of their family in an online situation, and students have lower quality of living regardless of COVID precautions protecting them or not. Students have bad physical and mental health, and that causes setbacks on everyone, and that loop just keeps going down this rabbit hole. Losing education doesn't just vastly set back students, but the entire community. We care about the community, and we cannot stress that enough, and that each individual person matters. Enforcing public options and online options promotes liberty and rights and even fairness. Overall, public education is a huge part of our society, and it is the ethical responsibility of the school board to prioritize in-person education, but safely, more likely than not lying on a spectrum of online to in-person, rather than only one or the other.
Thank
I
you.
believe with that, we see the rest of our time.
Thank you very much. 4 very interesting presentations. Reminds me of why I like to come back to the Ethics Bowl every year. Before I open the floor for discussion, and it appears to me we've got about 20 minutes before the room closes, I want to take this chance to thank all the teams and the sponsors and the guests for being here. And I do that now because in the first session, the conversation was so robust that we suddenly were blipped out. If only the blipping into the room were so seamless as it was when we left. So I want to say now, thanks to all. Let me ask our guests if you have any comments, and you may want to switch back to the gallery view at this point.
Hey, Steve, this is Jack Frost. I was, some of y'all were in the session the last time, and this was really interesting to me because hearing the viewpoints of all of you guys who are, first of all, in the education process now, and certainly much closer than I am to the high school and the middle school and elementary experience. You presented your views very, very well. And it reminded me of in business, what we need to do more often, listen to the customer, because the customer is the student. And your views really made me think about this question, which is not easy. You know, you've got health issues, you've got socialization issues, you've got the most effective way of delivering education issues. But it was just fascinating to hear it from what I think of as the customer's viewpoint. So very well done, you guys.
Thanks, Jack. Any other guests want to make a comment? If not, I will ask the teams to provide whatever insights you would like to, or to ask questions of the other teams, whichever suits you. And we can have this as a free for all. The person who starts talking first gets the floor.
I just want to say thank you to everybody for being here. Abigail and Ciara, I loved your points. And to reiterate what Jack just said, I am not a traditional college student. I'm at the University of Mount Olive. I'm a 10-year Air Force veteran. I'm 37 years old. So not only am I a customer, and not only am I a student, and I chose to come back to a traditional setting because learning in person is different than learning online. And I know that as a 37-year-old man, I chose to be in a college setting learning in person because I feel the dynamics of the atmosphere are going to allow me to interact with my fellow students and my peers, along with learn from my instructors in a first-hand basis. Now, on the counter side of that, I'm also a father of 3 children. I have a 5-year-old son, and my son is at home learning kindergarten. And at the onset of this pandemic, my wife had to leave her job. We have lost my wife's salary because she's home educating our kindergarten son. My wife is not a teacher. She's not being compensated to be a teacher, nor is she receiving the salary she once was after she has lost out from having to stay home with our son. And the most dynamic thing of a child's, especially, and I like what Ciara said, that a 17-year-old is more prepared to be independent. A 5-year-old, a 6-year-old doesn't have that luxury. And what our children are losing at this point in time, and I can't remember which team touched on it, but is the ability to become a functional member of society and to gain that social interaction with fellow students. They're learning how to interact with public, and at this time in their life, at 5, 6 years old, is the first time they're in a dynamic setting away from the comfort of their parents. So if we can't get a child to have that basic foundation, the fundamental God-given right, that educational experience, they're losing at a very young age, and we need to get them back to that. Thank you.
I actually have a question for Mount Olive. When you stated your case, you had actually mentioned how, and one of the lines you had said was like, it's the parents, for the kids that are online learning, it's the parents' responsibility to ensure that they are cooperating and like go and actually doing the process. I just wanted to ask how you could ensure that when you have parents who, I come from a single parent household, and I have a younger sister who is in middle school and going through that I hate school phase. I'm not doing this. And my mom is having to work to support her, which I'm in college, I support myself, but she's having to work to support her and trying to ensure this like 12-year-old brat that doesn't want to get on the computer to do school. So like how could you balance that specific, the education part there, but also the child's well-being and the family's income?
So I think what you're trying to say is, how does she work and support herself along with support her child in her educational endeavors? Is that what you're saying?
Essentially what I'm saying is like, how can you, or like with the online schooling, your statement was it's the parent's responsibility to ensure that this child is doing the online portion, but the parent also has the responsibility of working. So yes, essentially.
Okay, and that's why we focused on the Plan A model, which gives the parents the luxury to have the full in-person educational benefits, and the parents that need it or want it, the full all online format. We believe that a parent in that situation that has to work, it should be their ability to choose that all-in format that suits them best. And it could be, I also, in my neighborhood, I have 2 high school teachers that are my neighbors, and they express to me all the time their concerns about how students aren't not only paying attention and not doing their studies accordingly, but they also have these teachers have double the responsibility, dividing between their days. They have 4 days a week where they have 2 in-person days and 2 off, in virtual days. Students have Monday, Tuesday on, Wednesday, Thursday off, but on the opposite days they swap. And these teachers are tasked with doing double duty. They're tasked with doing in-person and virtual. So it's not just the students, it's the teacher as well. But yes, the parents should have the luxury of sending their children back to school so that these parents can work and support themselves. But also, if there's a child that's defiant and doesn't want to learn, that these children are in an atmosphere where they can be given the direct instruction they need, and if they need the hand to oversee them so that they'll buckle down and adhere to their studies, then that's what they need.
What do you do for low-income school districts where the schools are not able to provide in-person in a safe manner?
Did you want me to answer that?
Anybody?
So can I comment on that one? So in Buncombe County, we have a local high school that it's like a city school. It's not like a county public school, but it's a city school. And for those low-income families and the low-income schools themselves, they would reach out to the students, and if they were not able to come to school every single day, and they were not if their parents were not allowed to or able to take care of them and work at the same time, like such as a single parent household, they could elect to come to class and be sat in front of a computer in the school itself, but not have everyone there. So logistically, you could pull the kids that, as we stated, the resources, if they have a single parent, if they don't have Wi-Fi, if they don't have that food stability that they need, they can come and get the education, both or basically on virtual, but have a tutor in the room to help them interpret it. And therefore kind of giving the balance to the low income students that need it most, as obviously there are going to be some higher socioeconomic class students that can stay at home and hire a tutor, or their parents are there with them. But those lower economic, just pulling them into the schools, and that's just by communicating with the students themselves.
To answer that question as well, you really have to, I genuinely, I'm quite upset with the federal government that we've not put more funds into the school system so that people can get Wi-Fi and or 5G or 4G, whatever they need, so that like I mentioned, some schools are getting tablets that they can then give the students, which have the LTE built in, so that they have Wi-Fi access. These are our future generations. And if you look at our government spending, and I could come up with countless examples of, like, let's just say like NASA, they put $30 billion into a rocket. It takes Elon Musk $2 billion to do that. That's $28 billion wasted, which you could put to a lot of good. And that's one example. There are so many examples in which we have spending just completely misused. These are future generations that we have to be investing in. And the funding can get to these people. We can put money into our school systems so that people have Wi-Fi, so that people have tablets, so that they can connect virtually.
If I could just add one more thing, I don't want to get too far afield here, but I think what you've touched on with this question is a lot bigger than coronavirus. And I don't want to get too much on a soapbox here, but we're the only rich nation in the world that gives less funds to low income neighborhoods and gives more funds to higher income neighborhoods due to the way that we pay for our public school education through property taxes. So what we're talking about is a larger systemic issue of inequality. And I think coronavirus just points it out for us. But what we're really talking about is we've set up a system where lower income neighborhoods, and so I have firsthand experience with this. I went to the worst school in the school district. I went to a low income school. Like, I've seen this firsthand. We give less resources to people who need the resources the most, and we give more resources to people who are already well off. And so what we have is a systemic issue of inequality. And so this is not just a coronavirus issue. This deals directly with how we subsidize our public schools in this country, and it needs to be fixed.
Yeah, and going off of that, Noah, I think another problem that we do have with resources is being able to retool classrooms and being able to, especially during a pandemic, how do you make sure to retool classrooms and, be able to have sanitation for all schools and do it in a safe way when money is being misplaced? And so how do you do that during a pandemic? How do you make sure that there's tools, not just technical tools, but like making sure kids have art supplies and having all the things they need for each individual classroom, when they're not going to be in class, or when they are in class, when people are losing their incomes?
Those are great points. I was thinking when Kyle was talking about, it was Nicholas was talking about money being wasted. I was reminded of the Paul Simon song, "One man's ceiling is another man's floor." So that there would be some people, I think, who would argue that NASA needs that money. I would not be one of them. I would tend to agree with your point, but it does add a bit to the complexities that the society has to wade through. And I think that's one of the great things about Ethics Bowl is it helps us all see other sides of things. When Jack said, we're looking at more listening to the customer here. I've been retired a long time, and I'll tell you that being retired is the easiest position to be in during a pandemic. I don't have anywhere I really need to go. My income comes from a pension. My groceries can be delivered. It's been really relatively easy for me. I've had 2 vaccines now because I'm old, and I've thought, many times, wouldn't it make more sense to vaccinate students and teachers first, so we can keep the schools going? Does anybody have other comments you would like to make? I think we have probably 3 or 4 more minutes before the magic whisk away happens. These were really stimulating conversations.
I
Can I
just wanted
comment
to,
on one last thing?
Yes.
No, you go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say thank you for everybody for participating. So you get go.
Oh, okay. I noticed in Marcel's argument, and I think Kyle reiterated it, but I agree with your statement that younger children, like our kindergarten, first grade students, need more attention because, of course, they don't learn well virtually. But you also said that high schoolers, I think the example was 17-year-olds, are more independent and they can do that virtually. But I just wanted to say that even though I agree with that statement, I don't think it's a great example because we still do see side effects of, you know, our teenage population that is in high school, like having problems learning virtually. And also, just to give a personal example, I was a TA for a professor this past fall dealing with incoming freshmen into college. These kids were seniors in high school when the pandemic hit. I was TAing for this professor who had a freshman class. You could just see a difference in the freshman versus any other grade in college because they weren't engaging in discussion, they weren't completing their readings because they had gotten used to this environment of working virtually in high school. And when they got to a college like Catawba, and I'm sure most of y'all's classroom environments are pretty similar, they were disengaged. So I think we need to emphasize that all grades are dealing with learning virtually in different ways.
So as a personal example, I'm a first-year college student. I just transferred in with a bunch of credits. And my entire senior year got cut off March 13th. No grades were counted, no GPA was counted. And that was very disheartening. But I also know that there are cases where students, and I was just giving the example to compare high schoolers to kindergartners. There are exceptions to every rule. And there are obviously teenagers that definitely have mental illnesses and mental effects that they need the in-person learning as well. I just think that for the cognitive development and the beginning stages of life to learn how to function in the society, that public education in person is more suited for the younger kids, or more necessary, I apologize, for the younger kids because they are still developing and finding those relationships. And when you are 17 or 18 or whatever in high school, you have the email, you have the computer, you can reach out to those counselors and the teachers and the tutors, and you have those resources. As a 5-year-old, you technically in any other aspect of society would not be expected to be able to walk up to an adult and have an adult conversation. So teaching them how to conversate and live in society is important in the younger kids because of their development, not necessarily just the mental stability. That plays a factor into it as well. But in high school, you do have a social circle most of the time. And obviously there are exceptions to every rule, statement, whatever. But overall, doing more for the future generations that are younger is ideally more important than the teenagers because they have had the in-person instruction for 10 years, 12 years, 9 years. They've had the in-person classroom experience, and in order to give the foundation to the younger kids, it is necessary to put them in public school in person.
So I'm going to add a bit from both of your arguments or both of your statements. So like Paige said, and like you said, it is important for the younger kids. One of my closest friends, and I live with her, she is a elementary education major. She is actually in classrooms right now teaching these kids. And she also is using a psych background, like a psych major background, and we have deep conversations about how it's essential for the development of these kids. But Paige also does have a point, and I understand you are a freshman, but I'm a junior environmental major. I'm a big part of the environmental department and campus. I have not met a single freshman this year because we have lost the majority of them. I understand you are an outlier and you did come up with the pandemic, and I'm terribly sorry for that. But we have lost the majority of our freshmen this year just due to them not being adequately equipped for it. But this is about to close.
Thank you all. Thank you.